Warning: the following conversation may cause unusual side effects, including elevated intellect, spontaneous curiosity, and a sudden urge to finally finish that half-written book sitting on your laptop. Side effects may also include dazzling strangers at the gym with your obscure knowledge of anabolic steroids, baffling your friends with rants about the American diet, and developing an irresistible attraction to balance, moderation, and the arcane. This episode is powered by Testosterone, the world's first pasta-based hormone booster. Perfect for carb-loading your biceps, flexing your intellect, and rage-quitting reality TV all in one sitting. Because once you start connecting dots between wellness, writing, and the collapse of nutritional standards, you'll need something a whole lot stronger than chamomile tea to keep your sanity. Today, we invite you to step into the crucible where creativity meets wellness, and where the mind, body, and spirit are all put on the bench press. Our guest today, Michael Czech, author of Vile and Impious Wretches, knows firsthand that everyone has a book in them, but few have the grit to finish it. He's here to share how the creative process mirrors the fitness journey, why moderation is the ultimate superpower, and how meditation just might save your sanity in a world of quick fixes and reality TV illusions. From the dangers of anabolic shortcuts, to the quiet strength of small achievements, to the way our food choices shape not just our bodies, but our minds, Michael brings a torch of wisdom into the shadows of modern wellness. So grab your notebook, your water bottle, and maybe a Protein Ultra Deluxe shake, halfway, half mystery powder from the dark web, and 100% side effects, because this one's about to fuel both your intellect and your muscles.
Hello and welcome back to Brothers of the Arcana. As always, I am your host, Alex Aldea.
I am your host, Dave Ferrigno.
And with us today, we have the incomparable Michael Czech, author of, go ahead and let everybody know what your wonderful book is.
Vile and Impious Wretches, a novel of King Solomon's Temple and the ancient Middle East. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure to have a fellow bald person on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Have we never had a bald person on?
No.
Randy Sanders has been on twice.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, solidarity. That's awesome. And number one, we thank Mike for being on, for being available. I know he's had a pretty busy schedule recently. And honestly, I'm blown away by the amount of people and the amount of discussion that your book has garnered around the fraternity. Not that it's in any way undeserved. It's just it's fascinating that so quickly people have sort of taken off, talked about it, bought it. I've been very interested in following up on it. And what's been your experience so far with it?
You know, I think the best part of all of it is, first of all, the creativity to be able to express it. And I read some advice from a kind of a lifestyle guru, and he said everyone has a book in them. And I truly believe that. I think every person has a level of either experiences or thoughts in their mind that they could put into writing. And if not willing to commit it to writing, at least have a story to tell. And really, this has sort of reignited my excitement about being creative again. I'm well into middle age. Kids don't need me like they used to. My wife and I have busy schedules that sometimes coincide and sometimes don't. So it's been a real exciting way to increase my ability to connect with other people, but also what's inside of me, where I thought I had a story to tell that affects predominantly Freemasons, although I wrote it so that anyone could pick it up. And if they like a period of historical fiction, they should enjoy it.
I love that as an idea. I've started reading it myself. I have it in the car with me. And so for me, it's a book of fiction, obviously. It's a story that a lot of Freemasons are very familiar with. Folks outside the fraternity, maybe not as much. Although they probably will get a fair amount of biblical and other historical narratives that intersect or at least sort of Vesca Pisces with what we're talking about in this particular book. But walk us through how you sort of came up with the story and your take on it, let's say.
So in New Jersey, our grand jurisdiction has ritual for the third degree of Freemasonry. Now, every jurisdiction has a ritual. Ours is, from what I've been told, has more of an allegorical story that has some deeper detail than some other jurisdictions, not all of them. And I decided that instead of doing research, where sometimes I find pure research, a little dry. I am a creative writer. I have a lot of creativity in terms of trying to produce events and other things that are either fundraisers or parties and things. I do have some experience in hospitality. And I thought about writing something that would be purely whimsical and for pleasurable reading more than information transfer. And when I started this, I first put together a presentation for my own Masonic Lodge and wrote a documentary style slideshow of the characters that Masons find in this degree. And if I'm correct, there's 27 different players in the degree.
Wow.
And not all of them have lots of lines, no personality per se. They simply advance an allegory for the candidate. And I thought to myself, what if I can fill out just a little more of who these people are and bring them a little more to life? Because the Freemason goes through the degree and a lesson is taught. But there's so much more information that can be put together with seeing that degree. And I wanted the readers, first of all, I wanted the people who listened to the degree to start getting their own minds processing with creativity. And then they could decide to contrast what their own thoughts are in their mind when they watched the degree, or to take some of what I put together and say, wow, now I'm looking at this just a little bit differently than a straight information transfer of what the degree is.
I like that. So you're adding color, basically. You're adding background, you're adding context, and you're adding personalities, in essence. I mean, to what isn't really there or is just used to convey a top-level story, you're now going much beyond or much deeper than the original understanding, which I love.
And I'm sorry to cut you off. A conundrum that a lot of us have as ritualists is the idea of performing Masonic ritual, but it has to be letter perfect. So, if your viewers are not totally aware, Masonic ritual is never read. In the Freemason Lodge, you memorize everything that you say. And people are extremely focused on making sure that the words that they convey are exactly as provided in a ritual guide, all the way down to the, of, from, right? Mistakes are looked at, and it's not that someone's penalized, but it's definitely a standard that some of us hold ourselves to where we want to be letter perfect, and we're losing conveying the work with emotion, conveying it with intent. And it can be very challenging to watch the degree for 7, 8, 15 more times when it's delivered in a deadpan manner. Now, sometimes we have people who don't prefer that, but the reality for a lot of people is it's a more impactful lesson when there's just a touch of acting, so to speak, behind it, within the boundaries of good taste and that sort of thing. So the degree is what it is, and the lesson doesn't need help. But putting a story behind it that comes to life a little bit, I think really enhances the lessons that are conveyed and makes it a little more enjoyable. Sort of like understanding the crucifixion of Christ and then watching the movie The Passion of the Christ. brings it more to life. It certainly fills out some of the characters from the Bible. I took that sort of as a guideline. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take characters that Freemasons know based on your jurisdiction, and I'm going to turn them into real life people who have issues and thoughts and goals and hopes, and interweave all of them together like in the degree so that you see the rest of the story. Things are not explained because the degree would take way too long. It's taken for granted within the story that these people interact. I explain why they interact.
I love that. David, any thoughts?
So, Mike, I know this has been a long time coming. You've been working on the book for a number of years, you said. I think it sounds like you were kind of doing this. Even your wife didn't know you were working on it. So, in that whimsical process, and you were taking all this time out of your day to write this, you're saying everybody has a book within them. Take us through that process. Like, were you ever just sitting there just totally frustrated? Like, oh, how do I go about this? Or how should I develop this character or whatever else? Like, what was that thought process of how you were actually developing each character?
So one of the hardest things is getting started. Okay. There is a innate level of fear that if you are the type of person where you're going to produce something that you want people to enjoy, there is a fear that your closest friends are not going to like what you do. And that could be a major ego blow. So the fear of getting started, whether it's an exercise program, whether it's writing a book, whether it's, starting a new language, there's an innate fear of failure in a lot of people. The process began because I started this presentation I created, which was sort of dipping my toe into this idea of, okay, I'm going to produce a story. It took another person and their praise, and I'm definitely praise positive, like sensitive. It took someone's praise to say, man, I really like what you do here. And I said that day I had last shown the presentation. So I'm going to write a book. I'm going to make this whole thing into a story. And the process, so you asked, is there frustrations? There's frustrations when you feel like there's a perfection you can find. Now, I've written the book and there's still things I want to change about it. There's way more I read it and I go, I could have did this differently. The sentence could have been different. This character could have had this, that, and the other thing. And there's never a finish line. But there has to be good enough at some point or you will never be done, right? It's like painting and you go, my masterpiece isn't done. It's 20 years later and it's never finished. It has to be good enough eventually. And it's really important that when you get frustrated to walk away for a minute and just start to let your mind wander a little bit, kind of like thinking or meditating, and then the creativity comes to you, right? There are meditation methods that improve creativity. There's sleep more, just walk away from it, right? We are all at work, working on our computer, and we need to take a walk. And sometimes that deep breathing and just getting away from it helps you break writer's block or whatever it is you're working on. And the characters, the challenge was, again, because there's so many of them, was varying them sufficiently, but still being interesting. And some of the commentary I've gotten about like certain characters or certain situations is like, how did you think about this? Or where'd you come up with this? And a lot of it is just, I just thought about it. You always have influences, right? So like I'm into the Game of Thrones series. So, I mean, sure. There's an influence.
Very popular.
There are certain, Tom Clancy and some of these other writers who have a key character that repeats over so many best-selling novels. I like that style. And I sort of took a bunch of styles and my own. And, David, one of the best compliments I've received, or most interesting compliment, is more than 5 people have said, I read this book in your voice. This is so obviously you like, I read it as if it's you talking to me. And I'm like, well, that's even my wife. She's like, this is so you, and some of your statements and how your mannerisms. I use key phrases over and over that are totally from what I use. Like even talking to the two of you, I've used, right? And one of them is for the love you bear me. I use that statement all the time. And that makes its way into the novel a couple of times, usually in situations that are either comical or, not going well for some of the people in the book.
So when you're looking for that last cigar of the day, for the love you bear me,
Please
give me that cigar.
Yeah.
Well, we should also say that Mike is not only a brother in the fraternity, but he's an extremely close friend, and somebody who we love and respect very much, and is a close part of our lives on many, many levels. So outside of that, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I wanted to take us back a little bit to actually what Dave alluded to earlier, where he said that you didn't even tell your wife about this. So there's a metaphysical philosophy called courting, and it can be done by somebody who doesn't like you, or it can be done by somebody who loves you and wants nothing but the best for you, but for whatever reason, their fears can get in the way of manifesting an idea. And this is nothing to do with Donna, of course, your lovely wife, but in general, one of the things that's said is don't say anything about a project until it is fully completed. How do you feel about that? Does that resonate with you? Is that something that you kind of had in your mind in general when you were writing this thing?
100%. And one of those reasons is because I have some sort of issue with not finishing things that I start. And I never want to make a boast and then not finish. And I had some fears about this because I've been writing creatively since I was about 21 with actual alacrity and really putting down some stories. When I was an intern in college, I worked a job where I wasn't always busy. There were things to do, and then there was a lot of downtime. And as an intern, you're given low-level tasks, and I could complete them quickly. I wrote a 300-page or so story about all my friends in college. We were all Navy SEALs in a special unit, right? Nice. I did that for fun. It's unpublished. It'll never be published. It was literally for us. And enjoy. I didn't tell anybody until I was really close to the finish. And I think it's challenging to admit you're doing something that you may or you may not finish, because people judge each other. And it's like, I don't want to be seen as someone who doesn't finish something I start. That's very important to me. It's been important through all the big things I've achieved in my life, right? So Ironman triathlons, I've done 4 of those.
Wow.
Probably 100 other triathlons. I've run 9 marathons, right? So the endurance sports category, I've definitely achieved what I set out to do. And keeping in mind, like an Ironman level triathlon, you start training 2 years in advance in some cases. If you're
is that right?
If you're trying to do your best finish of your life, there's a significant amount of prep on a day where you can't control the weather, you can't control anyone else, 1,600 people in the race or whatever. It's even more these days. I'm going back now 20 years when I was racing hard, and you're literally putting all of this preparation and your goal of like your life in the hands of one day. But that sort of training really resonated with me to make sure, finish the race, don't quit, right? Going through college, like we sort of take finishing college for granted. I was the first one in my family to go. There was never a question if I was going to finish it, but I saw a lot of people way smarter than me drop out. They just didn't want to work. High school was too easy for them. They just coasted. When the demands were harder, they weren't prepared, right? I always had to work extra hard to sort of keep up. And I think that work ethic, it just takes you all the way through life, right? So all the way back to when you said, like, I didn't tell my wife, her opinion matters more than anything, but she wouldn't have held it against me. right? She loves me. I love her. She's not going to hold a non-finish of something against me, but I would have held it against myself. And I didn't want to put the pressure of saying, well, I've told everybody now I have to produce under pressure. It was supposed to be an enjoyable project. And it was one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done in my entire life. And that's why I think everybody has the opportunity that you have to put the time into it. You have to fit the time. You have to be organized. You have to want to do it. But you don't have to start writing start to finish the way I did. You can write a page a week. And yeah, it might take several years to finish an edit and that sort of thing. Or you can collaborate with someone based on what the type of book you're writing. But I think that it's, as many self-published authors exist, it's still a feat no one can take away. Right? No one can take away some of the other things we've all accomplished in our lives. And I tell guys who finish like now in their 40s and 50s, hey, I ran a 5K. I go, no one can take that away from you, because not everyone does that. Even though we live in a society where we always use the word only. I only lost 10 pounds. Well, I only ran a 5K. Well, I only wrote this or did that. That's a terrible, terrible modifier to the sentence, because it's literally more than a lot of people do. Right?
That makes a lot of sense. Originally, before you actually went ahead and wrote this, or actually, I'm sure it was while you were writing it secretly, and nobody knew, that we thought about having you on the podcast because you are a well-known trainer. And as you said, you've done triathlons, you've run marathons. You're a guy who's very, very active. Dave Ferrigno's a guy who's pretty active. I am rather sedentary for the most part. And what I'm hoping, a lot of people we have on the show, we talk about very heady things, right? So very philosophical things. And it's wonderful to talk a little bit more grounded in terms of some of the philosophies that we have in Masonry and outside as men of esotericism, about, the body being the temple of the mind and keeping the body in shape and keeping that body. And how does that keeping the body in shape affect the journey towards enlightenment, if you will, right? So that's a huge question, but try your best to put a chink in the armor there.
Okay. So one of the things that we talk about in the fitness world now, we call it, we kind of changed it sort of to wellness. That is a much broader world than, hey, I work in fitness. Mm-hmm. Wellness, so first of all, it's a softer term. It appeals to a broader audience, but it also includes nutrition, mind, spirit, and everything that sort of encompasses being what we would say is healthy. So the body is the organism that drives everything in your life. Now, the mind and the body, we say the mind-body connection, which basically means that without one being healthy, it's very difficult for the other one to be healthy and achieve an optimal level of performance. So there's a lot of inclusion of higher thinking when it's driven by good nutrition, adequate sleep, stress management, and movement, because exercise and good nutrition are providing basically all systems are go when all of these things are working well together, right? So when you're well fueled, your movement's better. When your movement's better, it goes back to your mind and creates senses of well-being, allows you to reduce your stress more effectively and more efficiently. So all of this goes down to efficiency. And when you're working efficiently, your mind doesn't have to spend energy compensating for deficiencies. So then it can apply itself to deeper thinking, higher levels of esoteric thought, higher levels of human interaction. You are more confident. You feel better. You tend to smile more. As long as you're well rested, you're just more alert and aware. And that is an attractor for all the things people want or say they want, right? So all these things have to come together to be optimal.
You know, I think one thing you touched on earlier, which is the truth, is there's this fear of not finishing, and then there's also the fear of not getting started. And I think in the wellness space, that's a big factor too, because, and Mike, you could probably attest to this, but it seems like there's so many individuals that are just like, I'd like to go work out, or I'd like to go to the gym, but I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't want to look like an idiot. I'm fat, so I don't want to be in the gym, and people will make fun of me. And
hey, get out of my head.
I think, well, wasn't specifically targeting you, but okay. But, you know, with that being said, I think, you know, just from that perspective, what would you give advice to people, you know, as a wellness coach and as somebody in that space? You know, how can they overcome that fear so they don't feel like, oh, people are going to make fun of me from being in the gym and I'm fat, or I don't know what I'm doing?
So, you know, I have been in the fitness and wellness business going on 30 years in different capacities. All right. So I am fairly well educated in this. I carry about 14 professional certifications in different training systems, nutrition systems, all kinds of things. We call them systems, all kinds of different aspects, right? I understand meditation. I understand yoga, all these different wellness modes. And the biggest issue that people have is self-consciousness about getting started. So you said it, oh, if I'm too heavy to start and that sort of thing. The thing that I would want someone to realize is, quite honestly, nobody cares unless you're in their way. Meaning, if you're slow and they can't get around you to do their exercise, that's the only time they care if you're there. Most people in a gym silently offer praise to people who look like they need to significantly change their fitness or body type or whatever it is. So the folks who are afraid are allowing that to be a crutch to not get started. And we could say it's almost like ego. Like, oh, everyone's looking at me. Who are you? Right? We look at the people who are hyper fit and we think, wow, you know, most people think, oh, they overdo it. Then we look at the people who are obese and we go, well, they way underdo it. And one of the biggest issues I'm seeing, and I'm really glad you asked this, is people are totally off balance with how they perform their wellness routines. You have the people who are obsessive and exercise a tremendous amount of hours per week, and that is sort of what their life is. You have the underperformers who are simply dangerously unfit, right? And there are 22 states in America where the obesity rate is over 35%. That's 1 in 3 people are obese in 22 states. That is a frightening statistic. And the research I'm reading is focusing on 2 to 4-year-olds now. 2 to 4-year-olds have an obesity issue. Okay, now there's some socioeconomic strata where that comes in, but let me continue. So the issue is that you get very few middle of the road people, the ones who are sort of exercising and taking care of their health adequately in a moderate fashion that is sufficient to maintain their health. So I work a lot in the senior space. For argument's sake, we're going to say it's 50 and up, although seniors are typically considered, you know, in their 60s. But that space underperforms drastically. And I'm talking about people who attend classes or exercise several times a week, but they simply don't do enough to trigger a change, right? So they come into a class, they lift 2-pound weights for every exercise we do, and they can leave saying, I'm happy I worked out. I'll tell my doctor. But they're not triggering any changes in their physiology whatsoever. So if they were overweight, they stay overweight. If they have bone density issues, they don't get any better. If they're trying to improve their strength and the resilience of their joints, it's not happening because they're not stimulating themselves appropriately. right? And I always use the mathematics example. If we just do addition and subtraction till we're grown adults, we'll never get smarter. We got to start some algebra. We have to start calculus and geometry, and your body grows the same way your mind grows. Now, on the other side, you have the people who exercise to such a high amount, they are keeping our chiropractors, they're keeping our orthopedists and our physical therapists highly employed. Now, these people all have their place. They're all useful. And I've used all of them in different parts of my career. But the reality is that for more information available than ever, more sports medicine, higher levels of nutrition, people are in more pain than ever. Okay, the amount of knees and shoulders that an orthopedist sees in a given year, it's a mind-blowing number, right? Where an orthopedist goes, oh yeah, I do 5 knees a week. I'm like, that's unbelievable. But particularly in more socioeconomic affluent areas, people, they're type A's and they go hard. And they feel like if I can run 5 miles, a marathon would be better, right? It's a quantity game for lots of people. Oh, if I play tennis 3 days a week, think how good I'd be if I played 5 days a week. And the issue becomes people's bodies can't handle the strain. And we see that particularly with children. 4-season athletes it's not a good idea. And if you believe your child is going to get either a college scholarship or some kind of pro opportunity, it can happen, but the price to pay is significant. And you really have to understand what you're getting into. And, when a parent thinks their child is going to play Division I football, my first question is, how do you feel about your son being on steroids? And they have no idea how to answer that, except that's terrible. But it doesn't, the size is one thing. And David, you played football. It's the recovery, right? Drugs are required for recovery. When 260-pound men are running 9 miles an hour into each other head first, you need some serious recovery help. And protein and amino acids isn't going to do it. We're talking about major pain. So again, we have the overdoers and the underdoers. And what we need to start realizing is that we need to get to a moderate level. And we say like everything in moderation. Now, if you're out of balance, meaning let's say you're 30 pounds overweight, right? And I got to lose some weight, or, things are really achy. I'm just not fit. Sometimes there's a time where you have to do a little more, or maybe a little more vigorously. But the idea of one mode for all time, it's just not how the body responds well.
So there's 2 things I want to discuss there. I think, we could talk about hypertrophy. Obviously, you need to be doing enough to grow muscle if you're trying to, or some kind of progressive overload, right, with your training. And also circling back on something you mentioned with, the dietary and nutrition. I know you recently went on a trip overseas. It seems like the obesity in America, do you think it's also stemming from, granted, I realize people are a lot less active than they used to be. We're sitting behind desks all day working and things of that nature. We're not out in fields. We're not working construction jobs or whatever. Typically, the blue collar workers maybe, have a lot more activity going on. But do you think there's something to be said about the American diet with all the additives, all the, processed foods and other crap? Because I know, like, when I've gone to Europe, I could eat like a friggin' king and I end up losing weight and I realize I'm walking a lot more. But, it just kind of seems like their food's a lot more nutritious. And then just if you could circle back on, kind of that progressive overload too. Not to throw 2 questions at you at once, but I'm sure you could handle it.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on these things. So I'll start with the nutrition thing. And I agree. And we sort of unfairly blame America as the only, because, right now England has an obesity crisis. A lot of developed industrialized nations are dealing with this. Now, we are exporting some of our worst things. I was in Morocco, there's a McDonald's. There's all the fast food, right? Pretty much. You're seeing that everywhere. I was in the south of Spain. There's Mickey D's is everywhere. I mean, they're global. Coca-Cola's global, and other companies. So I'm not just going to blame them. But the initiatives we're looking at right now about like making America healthy again, there is a significant amount of additives and some processes to create our food that are simply unhealthy. They're profit based, right? So when we say we've kind of we sell our souls for money, there's an easy argument for that statement. The primary thing that we're finding, however, is that junk food tastes great. Healthy food has to be creatively prepared to make it taste great. And a lot of times the additives that make it taste great are just not healthy, right? So it's a saturated fat situation. It's sugar itself or sugar substitutes. I'm not talking about like Splenda. I'm talking more about like corn syrup and some other things. So in terms of, we always say you can't outrun a bad diet. We say that in training all the time, meaning all the exercise on the planet isn't going to help you if your diet's not reasonably healthy. Okay. So it is possible to lose weight and get fitter on diet alone, but doing both things in concert create a synergy where your body responds much more quickly and more efficiently. And you're going to hear me use the word efficiency all the time. Right. My job is to get people to a place in the most efficient and safest way possible. Now, if you take that to your other statement about gaining muscle hypertrophy, so there's an issue that a lot of men have to realize is that after the age of about 25, that game is going to very quickly end. And now you need to understand that you can create muscle in your body and you can stave off the gain of body fat, but trying to look like a model in a magazine is going to be very, very difficult. We have a standard that for most people is completely unachievable. And that has to do with having a body fat percentage around 8% or less. And that would mean that the definition of your midsection and everything else is significant, where you're like, all right, I mean, this guy looks great. That is so challenging to achieve. And that becomes a level of dedication most people will not pay that bill. But they feel like if they lift heavy weights and they read magazines and follow these bodybuilding routines, that they're going to get there. The reality here for the bodybuilding set is that, first of all, their nutrition is unlike anyone else's. The amount of food that these people put away, 7,000 calories. Look, we all think we can do that. Oh, well, I'll eat 2 pizzas, blah, blah, blah. That's just not going to fly. We're talking about eating every 2 hours to the point where even these guys are exhausted from eating. They also spend their time exercising and sleeping. That's a bodybuilder's lifestyle. The average Joe like you or me also doesn't have the testosterone level unless they're doing replacement therapy or using an outright anabolic steroid. Okay, you simply cannot grow to that level. It's the 1 in 20 million that can do that without anabolics. Now, the other issue is, besides that, guys are still training like they're 20. And I am trying to get people away from that. You cannot exercise like you're a 20-year-old, where you're going to max out the number of times you lift the heaviest weight and then take a 4-minute break. That is going to really not serve the purpose of being healthy. And your risk goes up drastically as you age. Okay. So there is a sweet spot for strength training that is, where you are tired. And I tell people, if you're not really into the counting and the science behind it and understanding your data, exercise till you're breathing hard and sweating, take the shortest amount of rest and go to it again. And I can get somebody very fit on a 30-minute workout, assuming they're doing certain things several times a week and they're trying to eat reasonably well. So I look at the old time circuit of I'm going to pump up massive amounts of weight. The problem is that a lot of these guys who do it, they're strong, but they're still heavy. They're not losing body fat. And it's because that style of training doesn't work for an older person, older being 30 and up. It's a totally different style of training now.
Ferrigno, I think, how do you work out when you go to the gym?
He trains like a football player who's got to push a 260-pound guy out of the way.
He lifts 260-pound guys, I think. Yeah.
I was going to say, I was at the gym benching 4 plates earlier and just cracking up listening to that. I'm like,
we found the answer. We found it.
So let me backpedal about 400 feet. At the end of the day, right? So one of the questions that's constantly asked is, what's the best exercise? And the answer is whatever will keep you going back to it, right? So there are people who say, look, I want to do this style of training because it's what I enjoy. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're not expecting a different result. So at the end of the day, people are stuck in their ways. Okay. Women feel like I'm going to get big and blocky and look masculine if I lift heavier weights. That's not how it works. Women do not have the hormones for growth. There are some. That is a very small subset of women around the world. And the ones who are big and muscular, they are also taking hormone replacement and anabolics. The average woman will remain feminine and look great if she pushes herself to the point where she's breathing heavy and sweating when she strength trains. That is how it works for almost everybody. And if you get through a workout and you don't say to yourself, I'm kind of tired, and my heart rate's been up for quite a while in this workout, you really have to start thinking twice about what you're doing. So for you, David, if you enjoy the training, you should not stop it. But if your goal is to change something else about you, you have to start thinking about a different style to incorporate. And that also might be, hey, my back hurts. Maybe some sports stretching and yoga, right? Some kind of other mode. And it doesn't have to be an hour long. It might be 7 minutes a day where you're focusing on certain muscle groups that loosen your low back. Living with low back pain, 98% of the cases, that doesn't have to happen, but you have to change and you have to be consistent. It's 7 weeks to consistency of a habit on the minimum. And that's a long time, right? That's 6 weeks, or I'm sorry, 7 weeks. You're looking at 49 days. That is hard to do anything in a row that you're not used to. So we start super gradual. Let's do a 2-minute stretch for the first 3 days. Then we'll start to add a little. When people run and they go, running's too hard. I can't run, it's too hard. It's because they start off too fast. It's because they push themselves. I tell people, jog for 30 seconds and walk for a minute. And they sit there and they go, that just sounds so weak. And I say, but that's where you are right now. It's not that you're a weak person, you're just deconditioned. So, and again, let's take it back to learning the foreign language. You don't go into conversational Spanish 4. You start learning how to count. You start learning certain words that are very simple to understand. So if you're that deconditioned and you need to run or jog and then walk and then jog and walk, and it might be a 10-minute exercise session, that's where you have to start. Get rid of your ego and start where you can so that you have adherence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, at least for me personally, I just find if I lift light, even if I do 30 reps in a set, I don't feel anything. It's like, I get tired, but it's like the next day I'm not sore at all. I don't feel like I've really accomplished anything. So unfortunately, I feel like that's why I end up just lifting heavy. I mean, even when I want to do light back days, I end up, go ahead.
let me level set with you because, you know, the example you just gave is it's not an appropriate programming, right? 30, if I did 30 repetitions, it shouldn't be. If you're doing 12 repetitions and you should be like, by 12, I need to stop right now. Okay. Now you could lift a significant amount of weight. I would then program you to go right into a different move immediately with no rest. I could put you on the floor in one workout. Any trainer can put a person on the floor by changing the mode of their exercise, right? So
Fair.
You told me, well, look, here's how I feel. I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy because you're finding a reason through an extreme example why you're going to continue to do what you do. Now, again, it's your decision. It's your body. All I'm telling you is that if you want a different result, your best thinking got you to where you're standing right now. And there are other scientific proven methods to get people where they're looking to go. And that's the same thing when you and I discuss philosophy, religion, history. Some of the facts are the facts, but the interpretation is how we all learn from each other when we talk, right? So Alex always provides certain levels of deeper esoteric thinking to some of the most common situations we find ourselves in. And that can influence us to start thinking a little differently. My job as a wellness professional is to tell people that there's other ways to go, and research backs the results that can occur should you adhere to it. It doesn't mean that you have to not do what you enjoy, but tweaks matter for efficiency. I told you I would use that word a lot, right?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And, you know, I think it's interesting that you mentioned like the ladies. I mean, I see a lot of girls in the gym. They do mostly lower body all the time. And we have a couple of friends at Lifetime that we talk to all the time. And they're just like, oh, I don't like doing upper body because I'm just going to get really big and bulky and I won't look like a woman anymore. And it's just like, well, you're not taking Trembolone or something, so you'll probably be fine. But, you know, and I think that's the other thing that I find astounding today is how many people are actually taking anabolic steroids and other TRT when they don't really need it. You know, I know a lot of people in their 20s and 30s that are taking some form of testosterone, growth hormone, or, you know, stuff like Anavar and other things. It's just like the long-term health effects. I just don't get it. I mean, I get they look good, but you know, it's from your perspective, you know, what would you comment on that? Because like you were saying, a Division I athlete might want to take steroids in high school just to get there.
Yeah, you know, so here's a couple of things. And this is one of the challenges with any healthcare system is that there are physicians who are specifically in their practice, and they're considered a wellness physician that can prescribe these items to people. So, you know, testosterone replacement is there for people who have prostate cancer and certain other issues where their testosterone is genuinely low and it gets in the way of their normal life. There are people, physicians, who will find reasons to prescribe this to people who are either trying to get around the fact that they don't live their lives in a healthful manner, so they don't have energy, or whatever else it may be, or they're, you know, oh, well, look, I think more clearly with testosterone, my sex drive's better, I'm lifting more weight, I sleep better. There are other ways to achieve these things, but it's more difficult and it takes longer. So it's a quicker fix. And it's a way to get around not necessarily doing the other things in life that you should do to achieve this, right? It's hard to be healthy. It's hard to sleep well. We've screwed up sleeping terribly. And you find that people go to these things, and it's sort of like the selling your soul. Now, testosterone is very different than an anabolic steroid. Anabolic steroids are a specific compound created to induce muscle growth. And the problem is that the side effects that are potential are disastrous. Not everybody gets side effects. Every single drug has a side effect. It just matters if it's doing more for you than what the side effect is, or if that side effect is not noticeably affecting you. So when you're taking some of these items, you're replacing habits that you feel you can't achieve. The ladies who say, I don't want to get too big and muscular, listen, if it worked like that, I would be ginormous. I mean, I would be as muscular as I could be if that's how it worked. So again, that is some sort of weird old school thinking that they read in a magazine. And it's like, well, you know, I'm going to follow this old system of low weight, high reps because it'll tone me. That is the worst advice besides Tropicana orange juice is a health food and Cheerios reduce your cholesterol. Okay, they're the big three lies. And, you know, Cheerios reduce your cholesterol. If you were eating 3 eggs and 6 slices of bacon, yeah, Cheerios is going to help, right? Manufactured juices have stripped a good amount of the health out of those fruits, right? So it's sugar bomb. It's not, the health benefits aren't there. But I think people have to start understanding that there are professionals who keep track of this stuff. I mean, I'm reading research articles weekly. That's important for my knowledge so that I can give the best advice. I can tell you, I've been in a career 30 years. I can tell if someone's going to lose weight or improve their fitness in 5 minutes. I can tell of talking with them. One of the first things we're taught to do now as a professional trainer is assess someone's willingness to change. We don't even go through your blood pressure and all those other things without talking about a willingness to change. And 95% tell me how willing they are, and 5% are actually going to do it. They cling to whatever they thought they heard 25 or 30 years ago. It is absolutely not working because the numbers in obesity, 12.5% of the world is obese. That's 2.5 billion people are obese. 2.5 billion. Dude, that's a lot of people. And we're talking about on a world where how much of the landmass is not first world level, where people are literally living by only the food they can procure. We're not talking about people who all live like us in America, in affluent areas where food's plentiful. And that's worldwide. So, you know, 43% of adults are overweight or obese. And that's like through body mass index is how we figure that out. But that's almost half the people are overweight. And in ancient cultures, if you were heavy, that was a sign of prosperity. You were the chief of the tribe, right? Everybody wanted to be you because you were getting plenty of food. We are still programmed with our genetics to think that way, our genetic code. But that's just not how it works anymore. No, very few, no one in an urban area needs to hunt to eat. Now we do have people in this country who hunt to actually supplement their food supply. Right? I got no issue with that. That's, you do what you have to do. Good for you if you have the skill to do that. But all of us have more food than we need. We waste more food than is just acceptable. And the reality is that we're still making bad choices because it tastes great. It might be a little cheaper. And it makes us feel good, right? The responses in our brain when you eat a chocolate chip cookie is like, I mean, it's suborgasmic because that's what the products do to your brain. I'm not telling you that's bad. I'm just telling you it's easy to abuse like any other drug.
Well, so let's talk about that for a second, because it seems to have a similar up-down effect, right? With same as pornography, same as heroin, same as many other things that are out there as being, some of which are accepted as being drugs that have issues, some of which are still being debated as whether they're even drugs or should even be taken as seriously as other things that we're talking about here. And the whole idea put together of the effects that these things can have on your body, on your journey towards enlightenment, and all that. Could you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah. So, you know, we all know people who have some sort of obsessive or compulsive style of living, right? Everyone's got their thing, whether it's drinking or drugs or eating, sex, right? Everybody's got something that they overdo because we are definitely living in the world of excess, at least for us as Americans, right? So everything is readily available. And we're always talking the phrase from long ago, moderation in all things. And what you're trying to really do is achieve balance. And when those scales are even, everything's in equilibrium. So the hardest thing is to have access to something and then have it removed, whether it's by yourself or someone else. So if I say to you, hey, I'm going to go to your house, I'm going to clean out your cupboards, the only thing you're going to want is whatever I threw away, right? Whether it's savory snacks or sweets or whatever. It's like, hey, think of anything but a pink elephant. The pink elephant's in your brain. So there's actually a reprogramming that's sort of required on your brain to try to break these compulsions. So if you guys remember a program called The Biggest Loser, it was a weight loss contest, and they took people who were drastically obese. Now, in my business, this is considered one of the absolute worst programs to ever hit the fitness world because of the lack of realism. So now I have friends who go, well, I only lost 4 pounds this week, which is like double what you're supposed to lose for long-term adherence, according to some research we follow. They're expecting to lose 10 pounds in a week because that's what these obese people who were so out of balance were doing. Now, once the commercial comes on, nobody sees the nurse run in to take their blood pressure. You don't see the physical therapist come in and start rubbing down certain parts of their body because their joints are going to just implode, right? Because you can't take a 460-pound woman and make her run up a hill. It's just absolutely the worst programming on the planet. And these trainers who came on, look, they were actors, essentially. They were trainers. They had legit certifications, and they had credibility, but they were following a program that producers and writers wrote. No reality TV is unscripted, right? Nobody would watch actual life. You have to program this all the way down to some of the breakdowns the contestants had, right? The eating challenges they would give them. But what they never talked about ever was that these people needed to talk to a psychologist. Their brains were wired where they were guilty, they were depressed, they were obsessed with food and bad foods to eat. And like 85% of them gain a lot of their weight back after that contest is over because the adherence was because they were isolated in a place with a staff working with them. That kind of staff is about $1,000 a month and up. That's a very pricey bill to pay for the average Joe, right? I mean, you're talking about a luxury car lease at that point and more. So the level of achieving that balance, and I talked about this all the way in the beginning, was without balance, you can't work on enlightenment. You're so focused on what your negatives are and that you're not where you want to be. And you're always saying, well, I got to keep working. Well, I got to do more. Well, I'm not where I want to be. And that's taken as failure in your deep psyche. Only through feeling content and successful can you then achieve your next levels. It just doesn't work when you're in a hole, right? The deficit has to get you back to parity, then growth occurs. So, Alex, it is so challenging to truly take yourself to a level of enlightenment. And that's why you see the ancients were vegetarians, right? The gurus lived on yogurt and water and simple natural products because it cleansed their body. Their body worked at a reasonably good level. Now, some of them might have been underweight, But that was very different in those times. The average man weighed 135 pounds, 145 pounds, and was about 5'7", right? David and I are very tall. We're both large human beings, right? David's a big boned, big man. I'm not as broad, but he and I are tall, right? Now, I weigh 250 pounds on 6'4". I am clinically obese, according to the body mass index, because it doesn't take athleticism and some other things into consideration. It's about a 75-year-old program. So we're trying to redevelop some of these definitions, but that stuff was invented for the guy who had a 30-inch waist in the 50s, right? Everybody in the 50s all the way through the 70s was slim. Men were real slim. They had definition. We're not talking about big muscle. We're just talking about guys who were slim and, looked healthy. The women were smaller. They had, their hips were the same, but probably smaller than today. But everybody was a little more in proportion and the sizes were smaller. Now, they didn't have in that time the necessary wherewithal to try to achieve higher enlightenment. They were seen as new age, a little weird, right? Now, through systems like Freemasonry, different organizations, philosophy can be in vogue with those groups, not the general population. And the general population is still living in a little bit of ignorance. And you see that in those videos where they interview like college kids and they ask them questions. None of them listened in 8th grade about anything. They know nothing about civics. They don't know the history of America or the world. And they're kind of proud of it and giggling. Right. But there's more with the internet and simply the ability to communicate worldwide. I mean, my phone can call Australia in 6 seconds. There's more information to get and people are seeking less of it. That's problematic. And that is stifling our society's creativity, enlightenment. And you have a smaller population of people who are truly seeking that sort of level of mind expansion. And consequently, they're not seeking general overall health.
So, look,
Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, what are your thoughts? I mean, there's so many people now taking these GLP-1 receptors and, Wegovy or Ozempic. There's other medicines like that are, I don't think they really know the long-term side effects. And I know there's now a giant lawsuit, it sounds like, against Ozempic. What would you say to people that are taking those or considering taking them?
So it's interesting. My answer is probably not going to be what you'd think. And that's to say, I actually understand why people are doing it. I'm actually generally in favor of it in certain circumstances. Now, my biggest fear is the one you said. We don't know long-term circumstances. Originally, some of these diabetes medicines, diabetics couldn't get them. That's a problem. Okay. And people who tend to have more financial resources or have some level of celebrity seem to get these things without a problem. Now, the supply was more limited. There is so much money in this that it's becoming very widespread, more product, that sort of thing. The question goes back to what we talked about earlier. There are side effects in every single thing you put in your body. Are the side effects less dangerous than what the result you're getting from the drug? So if you are so out of balance and your cholesterol is dangerous, your blood pressure is dangerous, you have hip problems and knee problems, and life is pain, taking some of these injectables is probably the right move to save your life, at least in the short term, right? We all took the COVID vaccine. It was sort of mandated. We don't know the long-term effects of a quickly created compound. That's very frightening to me. If I could,
not all of us, Mike.
Yeah, if I could go back, I would. If I could go back, knowing what I know, I would
Right.
not have taken the 3 shots I was required to work. Okay.
I wouldn't have either, to be honest with you. I mean, Ferrigno's body is a carefully built temple where you would never subject it to things like vaccines, maybe to triple cheeseburgers, but it's certainly not vaccines. No, but I mean, well, and I feel kind of the same, exactly like you did, Mike. I mean, the stuff that we've learned now. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing to say because then it throws you down some weird rabbit hole now where nothing is what it appears to be. Who do we learn from? Who do we talk to? And is it all just a bunch of rabbit holes everywhere where we're living in this, what's called post-truth society, right? So where everything has the verisimilitude of truth, but nothing really gets at the actual truth. So
so now we're going to a place where it's like people are sort of divided, right? So if you feel that the vaccine was the right thing to take, you have the right to take it and you have the right to continue to boost. Sure. Now we were forced to do it under the penalty of losing our jobs. So I was in a different predicament than some people. And some people really went against the grain and said they weren't going to do it. They lost their jobs. They were ostracized. There's issues.
That's
okay.
True.
But now let's take it back to the injectable weight loss supplement drug. So I'm for people doing it if this is sort of the place where they go, I simply am having a terrible time trying to do this on my own. And they require this kind of help. So, I mean, the technology's there. That's good, right? Technology is good. We don't know the long-term effects. That could be a real problem. I don't think the effects are going to hit people on a broad stroke. There will be certain people in certain populations who have a tougher time. That's what I surmise. I am not in a deep enough scientific level to make that statement and back it. I'm simply giving you what I think on this one, right? And everything I say is obviously mostly opinion until I cite certain studies or things I say where this has been proven.
This is all for entertainment purposes.
Yeah, always, right? But I think that this method is going to continue to pick up speed, especially as it gets generic and less expensive. And the reality here is that with the numbers I quoted earlier, which are research, people are way unhealthy. And you're going to need to always make a trade to get to where you're looking, right? So if I want to get healthy, I have to give up time to devote to that. If I want to eat better, I may have to give up going out to eat with friends because I overeat and I don't make good choices. So I want to lose some weight. I'm going to substitute certain foods I love that are less healthy for something similar, but maybe a little healthier. So there's always a trade-off, and we have to start making that trade-off, but you have to do it knowing as much information as you can get multiple opinions. Okay, I think second opinions are great. A lot of physicians, we're talking about MDs now, are not trained in nutrition. And the advice they give is it's common sense, but it's not keeping up with what's going on today. Just as I can't tell you about heart surgery, they really can't tell you about what I do as a wellness coach. It's just a different specialty that they don't spend their time. They're not trained. They're not bad people, but they do sometimes pontificate like everyone on the planet with an opinion rather than a fact. That's troublesome. So I'll give you an example.
True.
Couple people who have had some issues with dehydration, they were not given information on how to combat dehydration. Now, you may think, drink more water. Okay, but how much, right? What are the minerals that are coming out of my system that make me dehydrated? There's 4 major minerals the body utilizes. Okay, calcium, magnesium, zinc, and potassium. There are ratios that you find in certain formula of powdered drinks and things that are made for that. So yeah, you can drink more water, but the question is, do you know how much you're supposed to have a day? It used to be 8 glasses of water at 8 ounces is 64 ounces. That's a half gallon. Today, 80 to 90 ounces for the average person. And they go, I can't drink that much. I can't help you. This is science. This isn't Mike's opinion, right? We now think, you used to work 8 hours a day. You used to be home for 8 hours and you try to sleep 8 hours. That's not how life works. Now you're awake for 15, 16 hours a day. You sleep 6 hours. You're working longer than ever. You're getting 24-hour news and you're more stressed out. Yes. It's not that people in older times weren't stressed. It was different. Television went off at a certain time. There was not cable news. You didn't have instant access to information that may or may not be true. And you know, the phone and the internet and the YouTube and the social media keeps our minds going. You're working harder than ever. And our minds, according to psychiatrists, are 50 years behind. So think about what's happened in the last 50 years. We're still living in 1980 times, give or take. Well, so much we didn't have. The internet was not being used like it was. So many other technology things, so many problems and issues we're dealing with, we still can't process. And as a result, people are depressed and anxious. And so many people I know are dealing with this. It's a joke in the town I live in that, of course, the local pharmacy provides more antidepressants than some third world countries because people cannot handle the changes in society and life. Our brains aren't there yet. So we're actually getting ahead of ourselves. And Alex, that stifles enlightenment and creativity. We're sucking wind emotionally. Men didn't talk about mental health issues till not that long ago. It was embarrassing. You should hide this. Don't talk about it. No one's going to understand. I give presentations to men in our age group. They've got to get help. They have to not be afraid to get medicated if need be. They have to find a professional to talk to. Life is heavy, all right? And our coping mechanisms can only go so far, and our friends can only give so much advice. And they can only listen to too much. They have their own problems. Professionals are there to help. Why would we not utilize them like we use a retirement planner, a personal trainer, somebody who's professional in a certain avenue of life that you require information on, right? Dr. Google's great. I'm sorry, Dr. Google's great, but a real doctor knows more. And to your situation.
So what you bring up a fantastic point, right? So we started with the whole idea of the body as a temple of the mind, but now we're actually talking about the mind and about taking care of the mind in certain ways and the spirituality, right? So let's talk about the mind. I'd love to talk about spirituality because you and I really got to know each other because we're both TM practitioners, and we really started talking about that almost first outside of the fraternity. Actually, why don't we talk about that now, and we can talk about mentality or other stuff after, because you already pretty much touched on it and the importance of it. What brought you to TM as opposed to other modalities of meditation? You've been kind enough to lead meditations that I've been a part of. And many other things that you really got out of your way to create a wonderful experience for folks to be able to deepen their ability to meditate. So why do you feel meditation is important, and what can we get out of it ultimately?
So one of the biggest issues that almost every person, I mean, I guess that's a big boast, but let's say most people I speak with will tell me that they cannot silence their mind. Okay. There's either a buzzing in their head that's like a beehive, or thoughts race through their head in a stream of consciousness manner. Now, that goes back to what I said, where people require things like more fluid and a mineral balance because their brains work overtime compared to our ancestors, right? So now, meditation is one of the ways scientifically proven to be able to reclaim the health of your mind. it is very challenging to get started because culturally, we do not live that way. We are a fast-moving society. Thinking quickly and acting quickly is prized and praised. And everybody wants that type of person on their side because they get things done. They're valuable. Okay. The slow mover almost gets left behind. But those people, to be good at that and to have success, they generally can't turn their systems off. So I like meditation as a method. First of all, you can't be afraid to learn. If you're going to start by, I can't, ... you're right. But if you say, I can, ... you're right.
Right.
So we have to start getting to a positive methodology and a positive mindset of, if other people can do this, I should be able to do this too. But don't compare yourself to others. So in the transcendental meditation world, you're supposed to meditate 2 times a day, 20 minutes at a time. Now, the first thing people do is go 20 minutes, right? And the excuses start. So there are other methodologies that are shorter. I was talking to someone in healthcare who uses a free app, and he recommended it to me, and I've used it many times, by the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. It's called UCLA Mindful. It's on the App Store. It's free. They have a director of wellness who created these meditations that are as short as 3 minutes. And like I talked about with someone starting exercise or running, start with what you can do. Transcendental meditation appealed to me because it's a school and a defined system of how to learn this. And I needed to go to instruction to really learn to do this. But you can start on YouTube today by typing in the search bar, 5-minute meditation, 3-minute meditation. You'll find some, all the way up to however long you want to go. And they're guided. And it helps you start to turn your brain off from other thoughts because you're focusing on someone speaking, right? Some people can fall asleep to the TV or to something they're listening to, and there are meditations to help people sleep. And they listen in their earbud, and the voice is soothing, and there's white noise or something in the back, and people actually fall asleep that way. I happen to like silence, all right? But that's up to the individual. But if you are going to achieve a complete level of wellness in your life, ignoring the system of your mind is vital, right? Everyone has to turn the car off sometime. It can't run forever. The gas drains, the electricity drains. Meditation is the electrical system that gets your car moving. And it's the one that keeps your air conditioning, and it keeps the radio playing. Because you must disconnect from the noise of simply being alive today in a multimedia environment where people are actually, some are being called less able to adapt and less able to take care of themselves because we're really spending time on some negative and unhealthy media and thoughts, and that food we talked about, and the lack of exercise. So being really well is a job. There's a lot of moving parts. And your goal as a human is to try to put in as many of them as you can. And they have to be prioritized over other activities, right? I don't have time to work out, but you watch television for an hour a day. You can combine the two and do some exercise while you're watching TV. You can combine meditation with standing in your shower for 4 minutes, right? You can't meditate in your car, but you can get some reading done by listening to a book. So yeah, you can listen to the radio, or you can try to feed your mind and feed your soul. It comes down to organizational skill and a desire to win. Right. So let's continue with that idea of the meditation. To me, it is one of the healthiest things you could do for yourself you're taking time for you, you're silencing to the best of your ability, anyone's demands on you for X number of minutes, even if it's 3 minutes, no one is allowed to bother you. Health givers, like caregivers, people who take care of chronically ill, nurses and physicians, people who work with special needs, they need to be doing this because they care for others. But this is where you have to care for yourself, because if the caregiver goes down, no one can help these people. And we talk about meditation to help children with special needs, particularly ADHD and some other emotional issues, because it teaches them how to quiet their minds. Trying to break the cycle of OCD, trying to quiet down anxiety and reduce depression. There's a lot of studies that say a reasonably consistent meditation program can really help with some of these issues. And we know that anxiety and depression is like the number one killer, right? Stress is killing people left and right. And in TM specifically, and I don't push any methodology, like I said, about what's the best exercise, the one you adhere to. The best meditation is the one you enjoy doing, right? Which is why I recommend a lot of people that UCLA Mindful app. It is just so easy to get started. And, you know, there are plenty on YouTube. I do some yoga classes where we do meditation. I use them right off of YouTube because they fit the general population of the class. And I've asked them for feedback and they like it, right? So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. We've done just sitting silently. Not everyone's good at that. So we try to, and in fitness, you know, group fitness, you need to find what your class wants to do because you need them to come back. So the methodologies are so diverse. And again, we're looking for that ability that if we can silence our minds from the clutter, now we can open our mind to the next possibility. Your third eye is closed until the brain stops cluttering itself with bad thoughts and toxicity. That's why food matters, rest matters, all these different modes of being happy. And everyone knows that if you do things for yourself, you feel better and you're more effective at being with others.
That's very interesting. Jordan Peterson talks about, I'm sorry to cut you off, Dave. Jordan Peterson talks about the idea of one of the 12 rules that he has is about children being taught to be liked by other people and to be able to be with other people in a way that's non-annoying or non-combative. In the sense of that, if you do that, it'll make your life easier as you go through it. Do you buy into that as an idea in terms of, you know, this whole idea of what you're talking about, taking the edge off, so to speak, with going to the gym, with getting meditation, with getting proper nutrition and everything else?
So I have a background in working with children for 12 years, 14 years, where I was seeing over 100 kids a week for sports conditioning, different modalities of sports conditioning. I mean, that's a prolific part of my career. And I'm certified in I can't even tell you how many different modes of sports conditioning. It has to do with being more coordinated, running faster properly, injury prevention for young athletes. Okay. So one of the issues that we're seeing, and I think a lot of people in our generation, so I guess we're Gen X, is we think now that the millennials and Gen Z, they can't hold a conversation. They act out. They're lazy, right? There's a lot of things thrown at that generation, these two generations. Some of it deserved, some of it, there's a lot of exceptions. But we are finding that the kids, particularly after the COVID lockdowns, they're less conditioned to be nice. They are not able to have meaningful conversations, right? So the stereotype from way back is the kids' table at Thanksgiving. I don't want to sit with the adults. They're boring. And I'm like, you're boring. You know nothing about current events. You can't hold a conversation. I ask you your opinion. You have none, right? So it's not fair to think that everyone else is boring when you can't contribute. So parents, one of the toughest things people don't realize when they become a parent is that it is a management job that never ends until the kid is an adult. And we know that people's brains are not fully developed in terms of being able to think and judge till about 25 years old. So a parent really has to be responsible for continually training their children till about that age, right? And we see kids who make some pretty bad decisions. Now, there are adults who make bad decisions too, but the issue is we have people who are busier than ever, career, whatever else. They have replaced the parenting job with driving their kids to activities. And they're saying, I'm being a good parent by giving my child this, giving my child a phone, other material items, but having those deep and serious conversations are getting more rare and more difficult. It used to be the most difficult conversation was the birds and the bees speech to your children when they were hitting puberty. Now it's talking about feelings. Now it's an idea that you can't be your child's best friend. You can be friendly, but there has to be the times where the parent has to say no, which is difficult. The parent has to be the heavy, very, very hard. And they're simply not willing to realize that they can't please people all the time, right? Now, Alex, you mentioned we want the children to grow up and please others. And part of society is pleasing others until it's unhealthy that your self-esteem fails when you can't please others. And more people have made the decision that they're unpleasable. No matter what you give them, they want more. That's a challenge. But the reality is that not all parents think that their children should become good citizens. Not because they want the kids to be bad citizens. It's just deeper than the thought level they take, right? They don't necessarily have a plan, and they're not going to take responsibility. So the child who acts out in a restaurant, some of us may think that the parent has an obligation to remove the child until they've calmed down, or continue to train the child onto what's appropriate behavior and not. It's much easier to hand them a tablet and let them play a cartoon while the parents catch up and talk because they haven't seen each other in 12 hours because they're exhausted from a day's work. They're both working. This is an opinion from me, but I can certainly tell you that I know young people who are incredibly well-rounded, who are really good conversationalists. It's because the parents spend a lot of time working on that. It is not supposed to be hard work and exhausting. It's supposed to be the reward for being blessed to have kids. Having kids is not supposed to be a burden. Yes, it's a financial requirement, it's an emotional requirement, it's a time requirement. But that's what you owe to the planet, is to produce offspring that make the planet better in their generation, like we're supposed to now, and our forefathers did then, right? Our kids are supposed to be standing on the shoulders of giants who are standing on the shoulders of even bigger giants. Nobody thinks that, right? That's very difficult. You have to try your best. And when you're an adult, sometimes what feels good immediately is not the best path. And I don't think I'm saying anything that's mind-blowing here. I'm just verbalizing what I think a lot of us kind of know until they're in the situation where it's really hard to keep a kid well-behaved. Well, that's your job. You're going to have to try a little harder and be consistent. Now let's take that all the way back to where we started with the mental health of our young people, right? There are more children in therapy than ever. Children are heavily medicated, right? Again, those ADHD drugs. ADHD and ADD were a rarity when our generation was young. It existed. Usually we said, oh, they're hyperactive, right? And the parent would try to solve it either by yelling or hitting. It worked for some, it didn't work for others. Now we have worse food, right? So the kids are having allergies. Nobody had a peanut allergy when I was a child. It didn't exist. It was such a rarity. Now we have classrooms that are peanut free for the one kid who has an allergy, or several. Now we have children who are medicated at a very young age, and they're in therapy at 8, 10. That's not to say not everyone could use therapy, and at that age, sometimes even kids have to unload their brains. But this is becoming a situation where we can look at the quality of the food and see that the need for these things has gone up frighteningly. And one of the statistics recently quoted is 1 in 34 children in this country are born with autism. Every third child has autism. The autism.
How could that possibly be?
So it used to be one of these things where we said, there's like hormone in meat, right? And the hormones were an issue. Now it's the dye and the additives. Some of our water supply is not as healthy in certain places. We saw Flint, Michigan a while back had a real issue. In New Jersey, I talk about Tom's River, right? Because things were leaking into the groundwater and that was causing a problem. So there are pollutant issues, but the food issue has been tremendous. Now, I have a hypothesis that is being looked at, not because I hypothesize, because others feel the same. And this is, some of the recreational drug use of the 70s, 80s, 90s, people are becoming parents. There may have been some alteration in something inside of them that might be causing some of these issues. That is being more researched. So cannabis is being heavily researched on the long-term effects. We know that synthetic drugs, not always synthetic, but like cocaine, heroin, etc. We know physiological changes occur from long-term use. The LSD, the acids, those sort of things, depending, not everything that comes out of it is natural, right? Drug dealers and they cut things, right? Things are added to increase street value, increase the supply, whatever it is, okay? I mean, that's not an argument that necessarily matters, except remember what I've said at least twice now. Everything in your body that you put in has a side effect. You have to make the decision, is the drug worth the side effect, and is the side effect severe enough to even think about? Aspirin has side effects, but for most of us, we tolerate it very well. It's not a problem. But there is that small population, which is why on the commercial, they tell you what could potentially happen to you, including death, right? Or arrhythmia, all these other issues that a drug could produce in a very small subset of humanity. So you asked, okay, why is the autism crisis now occurring? Because the autism business is gigantic. It's bigger than the breast cancer business, which has been massive, right? I mean, the common joke is they'll never cure breast cancer because it makes too much money. I mean, that's a very cynical way to think. I've heard that 100 times from 100 people. The autism business is getting too big. That's the kiss of death in curing a problem. But I'm convinced, and I think David feels the same way, because he and I have discussed it. The food has just been stripped of its nutritional value. Things are put into the food to create that addiction effect, right? So serotonin hits your brain, like I always say, the chocolate chip cookie. Why do we eat 8 or 10 of them when we know they're not filling us up and providing a nutritional thing? They feel so good. I've got to have another, and I'm not immune to that, right? That's what high fat, high sugar foods do to people. And remember that our generation, who are now parents, we're the soda generation, we're the sweets and candy and junk food generation, where fast food really exploded in the 70s and 80s when we were kids. And that stuff affects people long term when you continue to ingest it.
Yeah, although I feel like the fast food we eat as kids is quite different than what's today. I mean, obviously, even McDonald's fries, at least they used to fry them in tallow, right? And it was mostly potatoes, salt, and such. Now there's like 25 ingredients in it. So,
Yeah.
I think that also doesn't help the case. And, to your point with the tap water, there's actually a great site, ewg.org. You could actually look up your tap water and, it'll tell you all the contaminants and everything in it. It's pretty eye-opening because most water that people have in their taps carcinogenic and has all kinds of chemicals in it.
It's a frightening thing. Statistics can be very frightening, right? So let's say however many people watch this, very few are going to go to that site. Some want to know, right? And they go, but a lot of people just go, I don't know if I want to know, because the alternative is filtering your water, buying bottled water, spending more money on something that, you already pay your water bill. And we've been drinking since we were young, right? The whole analogy of, well, we drank from a hose. We're indestructible. Now children are drinking designer water for $8 a bottle. And the question is, are they any healthier, right? We know you have to be exposed to certain pathogens in order to develop that resistance. But the idea here is that by and large, people are not doing their grocery shopping on the perimeter of the supermarket, which is where all the natural foods are. And we tell people, if you spend 40 minutes shopping, 5 minutes in line to get out, 30 minutes should be on the perimeter and 5 minutes should be in those aisles where all the processed stuff is, unless you need like toilet paper or whatever, right? So the reality is that it's easy to demystify portion size. It's easy to demystify how to shop for food. Everybody kind of knows what's healthy. I mean, every so often there's a product they go, I thought that was healthy, right? Like the orange juice that's mass produced, or what we call the great Snackwells debacle of the 90s. The product Snackwells were marketed as a healthy dessert. They were, right? So
that's because they were baked, not fried, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
The baked chip.
Yeah.
So it's a better alternative. But when you eat a bag of them, it's not really your best choice if your goal is to get to a certain place. It's an improvement. So we take small improvement, a step at a time, and we encourage people to do better. And that's really what we do in Freemasonry. That's really what we do in our meditations, in our faith, right? Faith is based on trying to be better every day. Men and women of enlightenment try to better themselves every day a little way. Sometimes when you eat a healthy meal, you feel good. You go, I did the right thing for myself. I did 30 minutes of exercise. That was for me. I feel better, right? My adrenaline's up a touch. I know, my metabolism has raised. I feel good. I get a little bit of an endorphin type of thing going. That's why a runner's high exists. That's the natural reward for exercise. It doesn't just come from running. It's from doing an honest to God good workout where you go, man, I feel good. And part of that is emotional. So there's a very famous speech you can find all over the internet by a naval officer named Bill McRaven. Bill McRaven was an admiral. He was the highest ranked Navy SEAL for a time. And he's at the University of Texas, and he's giving the keynote, commencement address. And the first thing he says is, wake up, get out of bed, and make it. Make your bed, because you've accomplished something immediately. And again, like I said, no one can really take that away that you accomplished something. That should set your day up for greater success. It's that simple. You can find the speech is good. The guy's a good speaker. But
it's a great
whole
speech.
Methodology of accomplish one thing, and the dominoes continue to fall because success thrives on success. We know people who are having a really difficult time, and the phrase we use is they can't get out of their own way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you create a little bit of success, it is way easier to build on than the analogy I said where you can't get better when you're in the hole. You've got to be on even ground in balance before you can shoot up that mountain. And that mountain is emotional well-being, physical well-being, enlightenment, right? Because your podcast talks really about enlightenment as a central theme. And everyone you're interviewing at the end of the day has a point of view on enlightenment, right? We all do. And the reality about enlightenment, it's nothing more than a doorway to being happy, because people who are enlightened tend to be happier. Because they've pushed themselves beyond what they used to be. So when you succeed in an academic class, you succeed in a physical task. Hey, I ran a 5K last week. Wow, I never did that. I found a girlfriend, or I had a relationship, or man, I cooked a really good meal. These are all tiny achievements that add up to excellence. And my life's ambition and what I've done professionally and personally is to make excellence happen in others, because everyone has potential. They just find it too hard to try to realize it and exercise that potential because they're afraid to fail. And sometimes because it takes time, it all comes down to failure. Fear of failure is what stops everything, because we know every invention ever made was practically after several failures. And if those people had stopped and gave up, we would not be on this call right now doing this technology together, because someone would have quit. And when email first became a thing, I got an email address. It was never quit at whatever the provider was. You know, who knows? I can't remember. But that was my first
CompuServe.
It could have been.
Earthlink, MCI, one of those, right?
Even that in my early 20s was my mentality. And you know what? Like any 20-year-old now, life was hard. Out of college, trying to figure out life. Am I going to succeed in a career? Am I going to get married? What am I going to do? Are there going to be children? Am I going to make enough money to live? Am I ever going to get out of whatever situation I'm in living and get to the next situation? Am I going to find success, whatever that means? And never quit it just came to me. I didn't think too hard about it, and that was it. And I think now it's never too old to learn or to change your mentality. It's a good excuse to say I'm too old to change, but it's not true. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. But
It's very good to
So,
say.
Mike, one thing you mentioned circling the food store, the outer portion, would you say it's super important for folks to get organic versus, the standard produce or meats even?
So for people who are not exactly sure, I mean, organic essentially means that something's grown without pesticides or any sort of chemical help. So the meat, right, it's supposed to be hormone free. It's supposed to be ideally like the feed that the animals take in is supposed to be a little healthier. So maybe even their feed was not treated. So here's the thing. Organic items cost a fair amount more. They need to be consumed quickly. I mean, all natural items deteriorate because that's what tissue does. I do not recommend that people have to go to an organic system. Now, if you have a serious health issue, cancer, some sort of, really significant disease or disorder, organic can be a really good idea because you're not trying to take in any other chemical things that could be detrimental. If you're buying items like fruit and vegetables, you're washing the skin well. You're consuming them within the recommended time. You're keeping them in the right place. Like not all fruit and vegetables should be in a refrigerator, right? Not all of them should be on your shelf. Some have to be kept out of direct light. Some need a certain temperature to be the freshest they can be, or how you prepare them. I am not an overly into organic guy. We don't buy organic produce in our home. We do try to wash the items well, and they make vegetable wash, like you spritz it on the skins of your fruit and vegetables. You can have a scrub brush. Most people do not do that. Is it vital? I mean, look, people are living to an old age never having done that. So David, the short answer is I don't push organic in any heavy way unless you have a real health issue. And at that point, a registered dietitian has the level of experience to advise you there. So I don't have that level of experience and certification where I can deal with the disease population in nutrition.
Understood. Thanks.
That makes sense. So we've talked about exercise, we've talked about food, we've talked about meditation. What about certain things? Like what books have appealed to you as we sort of wind down the show? Let's bring it back to books. What books have appealed to you that have influenced you, that have left a mark, that have made Michael Czech into the man that he is today, into the brother, into the friend, and so on?
Yeah, maybe not everyone wants to read some of those books to become the man I am today, but so there's a couple that are super specialized that the general population wouldn't read. A lot of those were training system books. So I had the pleasure of meeting a Hall of Fame Ironman triathlete named Dave Scott. He wrote a book on triathlon training, and I got to spend a weekend with him as he was a masterclass level trainer. So I was actually certified in being a triathlon coach with this guy, Dave Scott. And there was a lot of stories about him and some of these old school Ironmen who started the whole competition and their mentality, right? So there's books on mentality, and there's even novels, biographies, where I think I pick up a lot of who I am. So I will tell you, one of the books that I've read that I simply found life-altering is called Rogue Warrior by Richard Marcinko, and he's the guy who started SEAL Team 6. Okay, he's hyper flamboyant in his writing style, vulgar, whatever, and you know me, okay, but that mentality of get things done no matter what resonated with me so much. That whole don't quit thing came from the whole idea of these men who trained through the toughest training system, in the U.S. military, arguably, because everyone's got their point of view on different special operations units. But they were some of the guys who kind of started some of it, and how you need to have a mental frame of mind to get through extreme situations. And part of that made me want to do Ironman level triathlons, which these races are, you have 17 hours to finish, and there are people who finish in 16:59, and they get the same medal everyone except the first place guy got, right? So the idea, and in fact, pro endurance athletes will tell people more like me, I don't know how you do it that long. If I can't finish in 10 hours, I quit, because I've got another race I'll go to in 2 weeks, and I'll try to win it. And they just can't understand how we keep going and going and going 4 to 5 hours longer than they do. And yes, they go faster, but we're all putting out the same effort level to do what we're able to do, right? So that was a book that I found incredibly, incredibly useful to my entire mentality of accomplishment. Another book people really underrate is the Bible. I haven't read the Bible cover to cover, and I want to do like that 365-day Bible thing. That's been something on my mind. But, it's the greatest story ever told. And I tell people all the time, if you have faith, you can get through anything. Without faith, you literally have got one hand tied behind your back in every task you undertake. And Freemasons always talk about, the guidance of deity before any, undergoing any laudable undertaking.
Great or important undertaking, yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right. So we're always trying to look to God or whoever you worship as your light to where you should follow. So that's not to say you have to be a Bible reader or Christian or this or that, but having faith in something, even yourself, it's important, right? Faith in your fellow man. And people are losing faith in God, and they're losing faith in each other. And then what follows is losing faith in yourself, right? So I like books that kind of perpetuate the idea that the human is capable of anything. Right. I talk about godlike powers in one of my presentation. Everyone has godlike power. I believe that. That's a discussion for another time. But I like the idea of these different books that talk about change. No one should be stuck where they're at. Everyone should feel like if they put their mind to it, they can change themselves at least 1 degree in either direction to try to achieve what they're looking for.
Wow. This is good.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, honestly, for your time, for wanting to come on the program. Tell everybody where they can go and get the book.
Oh, so thank you. And before I do that, I want to say that it has been such a pleasure to be with the both of you in this format. I really feel glad that you trust me to be here and to be, the folks at home. I hope you're still watching. It is, you know what? So we started by talking about the creativity. A creative endeavor is running a podcast like this, and to be part of it, even in a small format, it is very heart opening. So thank you. The book I wrote is available directly through me, and that has to do with the fact that distribution channels simply take too much of the profit. There are expenses to publishing. So you can contact me at buymcbook@yahoo.com, buymcbook @yahoo.com. Just reach out to me. I'll tell you about the payment information. The book's $20. I have digital.
We'll put it in the description for you.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
We'll put it in the
Email.
description for you.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you very much. So I really can't thank you guys enough for taking the time with me and for being with you. This is a great experience. Thank you so much.
We love it, and we'd love to have you back
Sure,
next time to talk about a lot more esoteric stuff too, which I think we do enjoy and we like to talk about. So thank you, and until next time, this has been Brothers of the Arcana. I am, as always, your host, Alex Aldea.
I'm your host, Dave Ferrigno, and thank you so much, Mike, for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you both.
That's it for today's deep dive into creativity, wellness, and balance. A huge thank you to Brother Michael Czech for helping us flex both the body and the mind. If you enjoyed this conversation, do your brain and your biceps a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell so you never miss the next rep of wisdom. This conversation was powered by FlexoMax 9000, because why lift responsibly when you can levitate your ego instead? And by Vein Pop Extreme, clinically proven to make every handshake look like an anatomy lesson. Until next time, stay balanced, keep building strength where it matters, and remember, the greatest gains are the ones you carry in both spirit and muscle. We'll see you inside the next mystery.